For millions of people every day, ordering food is one of the most ordinary things imaginable. You open an app, choose a restaurant, wait for a driver to arrive. Simple. But for the drivers delivering those late-night orders, every notification is a gamble. Most deliveries end exactly the way you'd expect. A quick handoff, a thank you, then on to the next order. But every once in a while, an address appears that shouldn't exist, a customer who isn't there, a route that doesn't make sense, or a delivery that becomes part of something much bigger than anyone realizes. The 3 stories you're about to hear all happened to food delivery drivers working late-night shifts in remote locations. Each one accepted what looked like an ordinary order. None of them knew they were driving into something that had likely been planned long before they accepted the delivery. These are 3 disturbing true food delivery driver remote location encounters. I've been delivering food for a little over 4 years. If you've never worked for a delivery app, you'd probably be surprised how many orders come in after midnight. Night shift nurses, factory workers, truck drivers, college students pulling all-nighters. By 1 or 2 in the morning, the roads are almost empty, which usually means you can make deliveries faster and earn better money. Most nights were completely uneventful. You picked up the food, followed the GPS, dropped it off, moved on. This happened in April of last year. It was around 1:40 in the morning, and I was about to end my shift. I'd already completed 9 deliveries and was only a few miles from home when one final order appeared on my phone. The payout immediately caught my attention. $48 for a single pizza, garlic bread, and 2 bottles of soda. The restaurant was only 5 minutes away. The customer lived another 20 minutes outside town. Normally I would have declined a trip that far, but for nearly $50, it seemed worth it. I accepted. Everything about the order looked legitimate. Verified payment. Verified customer. No warning flags. The only unusual thing was the delivery instruction. Drive all the way to the barn. Don't leave it at the house. I remember reading it twice. It was odd, but not unbelievable. I'd delivered to farms before. Sometimes people worked in barns or workshops late at night. I picked up the order and started driving. The farther I got from town, the fewer streetlights there were. Eventually the paved highway turned into a narrow county road lined with fields on both sides. After another 10 minutes, the GPS instructed me to turn onto a long gravel driveway. There was no mailbox, no visible house from the road, just a rusted gate standing open. I slowly drove in. The driveway stretched for what felt like forever. Tall trees blocked out most of the moonlight. Dust followed behind my car. About halfway down the driveway, I noticed headlights ahead. Another vehicle was parked near a large red barn. At first I assumed it belonged to the customer. Then I saw the roof sign. It was another food delivery driver. Different company. He was standing outside his car, looking toward the barn. The moment he saw my headlights, he actually looked relieved. As soon as I parked, he walked over. Before introducing himself, he quietly asked, "What order did you get?" I looked down at my insulated bag. Large pepperoni pizza, garlic bread, 2 sodas. His face immediately changed. He slowly pulled out his phone, then turned the screen toward me. Same customer name, same restaurant, same total, same delivery instructions, even the same tip. The only difference was the timestamp. His order had been placed 43 minutes before mine. I asked if he'd already delivered it. He shook his head. "I've been here almost half an hour." No one's answered. We both looked toward the barn. The lights inside were off. The farmhouse sitting behind it was completely dark. Not a single window was lit. He tried calling the customer again. Straight to voicemail. I tried. Same result. Neither of us felt comfortable walking toward the barn alone. We were still deciding what to do when another pair of headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. A third delivery car slowly rolled toward us. Different company, different driver. He stepped out carrying another insulated delivery bag. The first thing he asked was, "Did either of you find the customer?" The 3 of us compared our phones. Every order was identical. Same customer, same food, same address, same instructions. placed through 3 completely different delivery platforms. None of us had accepted stacked orders. None of us worked for the same company. It didn't make any sense. I called driver support. The representative confirmed my order was active. Payment had cleared. Customer account verified. The second driver got the same response. So did the third. All 3 companies insisted the deliveries were legitimate. That's when one of the drivers suggested calling the sheriff's office instead. About 30 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived. They searched the farmhouse first. Empty. Then the barn. Also empty. There wasn't a single person anywhere on the property. One deputy asked how long we'd been waiting. When we explained that 3 different companies had all sent drivers to the same address for the exact same order, he exchanged a look with his partner. Neither of them seemed surprised. The next morning, detectives contacted each of us for statements. That's when we learned something we never knew that night. The property had been abandoned for more than 8 years. Nobody had legally lived there since the owner died. But when investigators searched the barn more thoroughly, they found something hidden beneath a loose section of flooring. Hundreds of empty pizza boxes, fast food bags, drink carriers, receipts, thousands of receipts. Not just from our companies. Nearly every major food delivery service operating in the state. Some of the receipts were almost 3 years old. Every one had been delivered to that same address. Detectives later discovered similar complaints from drivers in neighboring counties. Different farms, different abandoned houses, same pattern, large orders, high tips, remote locations, no customer. The accounts were all real. The payments all cleared, but every identity had been stolen. Police never identified who was placing the orders. What bothered me most wasn't the abandoned farmhouse. It was something one of the detectives told me before I left. He said, "You're not the first group of drivers we've interviewed." I asked what he meant. He looked back toward the barn and quietly replied, "You're just the first group that waited for each other." I haven't accepted another high-paying delivery to a remote address since. Because every time my phone lights up with one of those unusually generous tips, I can't help wondering whether someone is actually waiting for food or waiting for the driver. I started driving for a food delivery app while finishing trade school. At first it was just a way to make extra money. Eventually it became my full-time job. I mostly worked overnight because there were fewer drivers on the road and the tips were usually better. People assume late-night deliveries are the dangerous ones. In my experience, they usually weren't. The customers were tired, hungry. Most just wanted their food and for you to leave. The only deliveries I ever avoided were the ones that sent me too far outside the city. Once you leave the main roads after 2 in the morning, there's nobody around if something goes wrong. This happened over several months. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. Almost every Friday around 2 in the morning, I'd receive one delivery that paid far better than anything else that night. Different customer names, different phone number, different houses. Nothing connected them. The only thing they had in common was the payout. Each one was between $40 and $60. Enough that I'd accept it without thinking twice. The deliveries themselves were strange. Every address was down an isolated road. Most of the houses sat by themselves with no nearby neighbors. The customers always wanted the food left outside. No conversation, no contact. I never actually saw a single one of them. After the 4th or 5th Friday, I joked with another driver that I must have the best luck on the platform. He laughed and said he never got orders like that. I didn't think much of it, until one Friday night. I completed another one of those remote deliveries and headed home. About 10 minutes later, I noticed a pickup truck behind me. That wasn't unusual. There are always cars on the road, but every time I changed lanes, it changed lanes. Every turn I made, it followed. I decided to test it. Instead of taking the highway toward my apartment, I turned onto a road leading to an industrial park that was completely empty at that hour. The pickup followed. I made another turn, then another, still behind me, never speeding up, never falling back, just maintaining the exact same distance. I drove that way for almost 15 minutes before heading toward the sheriff's substation on the edge of town. The moment the station came into view, the pickup slowed down, made a U-turn, and disappeared into the darkness. I convinced myself it was a coincidence. but something about it bothered me. The following week, another high-paying order appeared just after 2 in the morning. Different customer, different address. I accepted it anyway. Halfway there, I recognized the road. I'd driven through that area before. Not to that exact house, but close. After finishing the delivery, I parked at a gas station before heading home. Out of curiosity, I opened my GPS history. It keeps a record of every trip you've taken. I started dropping pins on a map for each of those Friday deliveries. The first few looked random. Then I zoomed out. My stomach dropped. Every address sat almost exactly 1 mile apart. Together they formed a near-perfect loop through isolated back roads surrounding a large section of undeveloped woodland. It wasn't an accident. Someone had planned it. The next Friday, I accepted another one of the orders. This time I mounted a dash camera on my windshield. I wanted proof in case the pickup appeared again. The delivery was routine. Leave the food. Take the picture. Complete the order. As soon as I pulled away, headlights appeared behind me. The same dark pickup. I deliberately ignored my route home. Instead, I drove in the opposite direction. The truck stayed behind me. I took roads that made absolutely no sense. Dead-end county roads, industrial access roads, a long loop around a closed quarry. The pickup copied every turn. It never got closer, never flashed its lights, never attempted to pass. It simply stayed behind me, watching. When I finally pulled into the parking lot of the sheriff's substation, the pickup immediately turned around and drove away. The dash camera captured everything. Detectives took the footage along with months of my delivery records. A few weeks later, they called me back. They had traced every one of those Friday night addresses. None of them belonged to the people listed on the delivery accounts. Most of the homes had been vacant for years. Several were seasonal hunting cabins that hadn't been occupied in months. The customer names were fake. The phone numbers were disposable. The credit cards had all been reported stolen. One detective spread a large county map across the table. He placed a marker on every delivery location I'd visited. Then he drew a line connecting them. The route formed an almost perfect circle, right through the most isolated part of the county. He looked at me and said, "We don't think those orders were meant to deliver food." I asked what he thought they were for. He shook his head. "We think someone wanted to know exactly where a lone delivery driver would be every Friday night." They never identified who created the accounts. They never found the pickup. And they never explained why the route mattered. I stopped working overnight a month later, because every now and then, when I open my GPS history, I can still see that circle, and I can't stop wondering what would have happened if I'd broken down somewhere along that route. I started driving for a food delivery app during my last semester of college. At first, I only worked weekends. Eventually, I switched almost entirely to overnight shifts. The roads were empty, the tips were better, and there were fewer drivers competing for orders. Most nights I'd finish around 2 or 3 in the morning. By then, almost every delivery was to truck drivers, nurses, hotel workers, or people getting home from late shifts. In nearly 3 years of delivering food, I'd never had anything happen that made me question the job, until one delivery in September of last year. It was about 2:15 in the morning when I accepted an order from a small diner just outside town. Nothing about it stood out. 1 burger, fries, a drink. The delivery address was a cabin roughly 15 minutes into a wooded area north of the city. The tip was decent. The customer had a 5-star rating. Everything looked normal. As I pulled into the restaurant parking lot, another driver was already waiting inside. He looked frustrated. While we were both waiting for our orders, he glanced at my phone and asked, "Cabin on Black Pine Road?" I nodded. He frowned. "I just had that order." I laughed. "Maybe they ordered twice." He shook his head. "No, I accepted it. I was halfway there. Then the app canceled it." He held up his phone. The order history clearly showed the same customer name, same address, canceled 28 minutes earlier. We both assumed it was just a glitch. It happens sometimes. The food was ready a few minutes later, and I started driving. The GPS led me onto a narrow road surrounded by thick woods. There were no streetlights, no houses, just trees. About 12 minutes later, I reached the cabin. A porch light was on. Everything else was dark. I grabbed the food and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, the door opened. A woman in her early 30s smiled with obvious relief. Finally, she took the bag, then immediately asked, "What happened to the other driver?" I looked at her. "What other driver?" "The one before you." She pointed to her phone. "I watched him on the app. He got almost here, then his car stopped moving. About 40 minutes later, the app assigned you instead." I told her the previous driver said the order had simply been canceled. She looked genuinely confused. It never said canceled. It just found another driver. I wished her a good night and headed back toward my car. The whole conversation bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Halfway back to town, I passed the point where she said the first driver's location had stopped. Without really thinking about it, I slowed down. Fresh tire tracks disappeared onto an old logging road. They hadn't been there on my way in. Curiosity got the better of me. I turned onto the dirt road. After a few hundred yards, my headlights reflected off something metallic. A car. It was parked at an angle behind a line of trees. Engine off. Driver's door wide open. I pulled closer. On the passenger seat sat an insulated food delivery bag. The restaurant logo matched the one I'd just picked up from. There was still a drink sitting in the cup holder, completely untouched. The receipt attached to the bag caught my attention. Same restaurant, same customer, same cabin, same order. I immediately backed out and called 911. Deputies arrived within 20 minutes. The car belonged to the driver I'd spoken to earlier at the restaurant. His wallet was inside. His keys were still in the ignition. His phone was missing. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints beyond the tire tracks, nothing. Police questioned me for nearly 2 hours. The following week, detectives contacted me again. They'd searched the entire area around the logging road. No trace of the driver. Then one detective asked if I wanted to know something strange. He placed 4 photographs on the table, 4 abandoned delivery vehicles, different makes, different models, recovered over the previous 3 years. Every one had been found on remote back roads in neighboring counties. Every driver had accepted what investigators believed was their final delivery. Every order had been reassigned to another driver before anyone became suspicious. The addresses were different. The restaurants were different. But every customer account had been created less than 24 hours before the order was placed, using stolen identities. The detective admitted they still couldn't explain why the orders were reassigned. Normally, if a driver disappears, the order simply remains active until support intervenes. These orders somehow reassigned themselves within minutes. The missing driver from that night was never found. Neither were the other 4. I stopped delivering to remote locations after that. Because every time I accept an order now, I can't help wondering whether I'm really the first driver assigned to it, or just the first one who actually made it there. Those were 3 disturbing true food delivery driver remote location encounters. For most drivers, late-night deliveries are just another part of the job. A quiet road, a remote house, a customer waiting at the door. Nothing unusual. But these stories are a reminder that every address, every GPS pin, and every delivery request begins with one assumption: that the person placing the order is exactly who they claim to be. Most of the time, that's true. But sometimes, the real danger isn't waiting at the destination. It's the reason you were sent there in the first place. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, let me know in the comments which one disturbed you the most. And if you've ever experienced something strange while making deliveries late at night, I'd love to read your story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more realistic horror stories every week. As always, thanks for listening. Drive safely. And if a delivery ever feels wrong, trust your instincts before you trust the app.